Hello friends, the year is 2023. Humanity has managed to develop flying cars, human-like robots, augmented reality, commercial nuclear fusion, and artificial intelligence. And yet, when it comes to gaming, specifically MMOs, the most exciting new release of 2023 is classic World of Warcraft. Again. A game that came out 20 years ago. Where are the gameplay innovative, VR, AI implementing NPCs in some brand new MMO? Well, if you've been following the news for the past couple of years, you might be aboard the same cope train for the RIOT MMO. However, the RIOT MMO was first announced back in 2020, and 4 years later, the only other update we got was the lead designer for the project tweeting that there is no guarantee that the game will even come out. And then he left the company. But the game will definitely come out. We just gotta be patient, you know? These kind of games, they take a long time to develop. MMOs are like... But I can't wait anymore. So I decided to make my own League of Legends MMO using Unreal Engine 5. And to make sure that this game actually comes out, I was gonna give myself 1 week to finish it. This is the story of that project. But first, a word from today's sponsor. It has the most advanced graphics of its kind. A ton of awesome champions to collect. Intense PvE and PvP combat, and its name is Raid Shadow Legends. Remember those over 700 champions? Well, you can only bring 6 if you want to challenge the Hydra clan boss. And this boss is no pushover. You better be on your A game, because the Hydra has 6 heads. Among them, the Head of Suffering, which is all about pain. It even has a new effect called Pain Link, which lets the head share some of its damage with a lucky member of your party. So you'll need to make sure you bring some champion that can take care of the Pain Link debuff, like Ugo. And then you have the Head of Wrath. After you hit it 15 times, it gets very angry, activating Vengeance, which triples its attack power. You'll need some really juicy heavy hitters to deal with it before the 15 attack in Rage timer. And then there's also the Head of Torm. Oh yeah, it's Halloween! If you're ready to face the Raidyard, simply download the game for free using the link in the video description, then head on over to raidyard.plarium.com, enter your player ID, step into the haunted Raidyard, grab a shovel, and start digging. You're in for a chance to uncover Amazon gift cards with a total worth of $20,000, as well as a bunch of epic champions, and also a unique promo code that everyone can use to receive a spicy in-game gift. So click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen right here to get a free starter pack with all these awesome in-game items, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Now, since this was gonna be a 1 week project, I obviously couldn't go into too much detail, but it's an MMO, and the first M for MMO stands for massive. So the landscape and the map had to be huge. And for that, I decided to use the Legends of Runeterra map. They have it an official map on their website. It's the most accurate League universe map, except it doesn't have Camavor. Camavor is an extra continent to the right that is not here at all. So you know what, maybe we'll keep that for the expansion of the game. And luckily, I actually found this map on Sketchfab, so I just yoinked that real quick. I put it in Blender, and we did some Blender magic and turned it into a height map. A height map is essentially just a black and white image where the white parts are the tall parts and the black is the low parts. But the problem is this map is very low resolution, so that's why we were gonna use Gaia. Gaia is a professional terrain generating software. It's used in movies, it's used in games, it's super complex, but it's also very easy to use, and it's also free. Well, kind of. If you use the free version, you can only export 1K resolution images, which is a little low. We're not trying to make classic World of Warcraft again. So instead of having one height map, I made this 6x4 grid to take individual pictures and split the landscape into 24 images instead. So we took each image, we put it through a Gaia filter, we made the terrain look a lot nicer. After all that was done, I imported all the processed height maps into Unreal Engine to make a massive 150 kilometer square landscape. And with the landscape imported and a few artifacts fixed, I just added an ocean. We started painting some landscape materials. Some I downloaded, some I made myself. My PC almost exploded a couple of times, but in the end, we got the map. And it was massive, and it was empty, and it was beautiful. You know what, already way better than Riot, we have a functioning kind of game. With the landscape in place, It was time to tackle each major city and zone one by one. All the cities in Runeterra are extremely massive. They have amazing detailed art, descriptions, lore, and to finish this project in a week, I had to at least do 2 zones per day. Obviously, that's not a lot of time, so all I really wanted to do is get the general feel of a zone. This was supposed to be a fast project, so we spun the wheel to see what we're gonna work on first. Oh no. Piltover and Zaun are arguably the most complex cities in this world, and after watching Arcane, I have a very good idea of how massive this was supposed to look, and I knew there's no way I can make it look even remotely close to that, but I got to work and I tried my best. And this was the first time using Blender to actually create something and model something. It was a learning process. I made the basic shape. We had these houses from a different pack that I had to edit and swap out a little bit so it actually makes a little bit of sense. We made this ball from the reference, and then we started working on Zaun. I'm sorry, I can't show you Piltover and Zaun first. I just don't want to lose you straight away, but I promise I'll come back to it and I'll show you later. So 2 days had passed working on Piltover and Zaun, and I realized that my 1 week deadline is just not very realistic and it's just not gonna happen. So I reevaluated the project and decided on 2 weeks instead. 1 day for each zone. Plenty of time. Targon is a giant mountain and by far the tallest peak in the whole of Runeterra. This is the home of the celestial beings within this world. You have the Aurelian Soul, the Leona, Diana, Pantheon, Giga Chad. Many pilgrims try to climb the mountain to glance at the wonders at the top, but very few of them make it to the peak. The mountain is extremely detailed in the artwork. You have these basically cities carved within the mountain, these otherworldly scales and shapes on the mountain side as well. The scenery is beautiful, the artwork is amazing, but the main element is the big mountain. So I made a big mountain in Gaia, and I just pasted it in UE5. And then, to emulate the complex structures, the complexity of the mountain surface and the scaliness and their otherworldly alien-looking terrain, I just painted some circles on it. And one last big element was the portal on top of the mountain, where it is said that the Celestial themselves can travel through worlds. So I just added a shiny cylinder on top. And with that, Targon was done. It took me 10 minutes, Riot. What's your excuse? Noxus is a brutal expansionist empire. They conquer neighboring tribes and assimilate the strong. The fortress is incredibly complex in the artwork with a ton of layers and crazy detail. There's just no way we can do that in 1 day, so I wanted to just get the overall feel of Noxus, at least from a distance, so we started with the Immortal Bastion. Luckily we have Legends of Runeterra for reference, and they had amazing references for our model, which we made in Blender, following the shape of the walls. I think the walls turned out pretty good. Then we made this bridge structure and placed it in multiple points throughout the region. Then we added some more details following the artwork, and then the houses were actually made by our friends in the second kitchen, Bimatsu and Lucas, so thank you for the help. And we used the PCG to place them inside the fortress. After the houses and after adding some texture inside the city, it was still looking kind of bad. So we used the oldest VFX trick in the game. We hide it completely. So we added this trigger volume that detects when the player enters the zone, and when that happens we made it change the color of the sky and change the weather to this dark red storm. It doesn't look that bad when you can't see anything. Bilgewater is the pirate city of Runeterra, located in the Serpent Isles. The thing that stood out for me the most in Bilgewater were these circular rocks and the whole verticality of the whole city. But first, our island looks really flat. So we went back into Gaia and we kept trying to find a shape that we could use for our islands. Eventually we found a pretty decent one and we imported that as a brand new landscape. Then it was time to work on these circular rock formations, and for that I went back into Blender and I did sculpting for the very first time. Sculpting turns out not that difficult. You just start from a very basic shape, you keep adding detail. I had these rock brushes and I just brushed the whole thing until it either looks okay or until I get bored of doing it. And since we're professional 3D modelers now, I also wanted to make these giant fish statues. These are used to ward off against giant sea monsters apparently, and they're all around the Serpent Isles. So I thought that was really cool, and of course we want to keep it perfectly accurate to the lore and the artwork. We made the fish, and I think it looks pretty good. And then for the city, I got a bunch of assets from a lot of different projects on Sketchfab and the Epic Marketplace, and I just threw everything together. Then I used a blueprint to create this procedurally generated path, this wooden plank that would go around the city. I added some bridges, I added some ropes, but of course in the artwork it looked massive with all the boat parts that make up the city and all these waterfalls in the middle of the sea. We had none of that, but we had a secret weapon. Rain. We added some heavy rain, and now Bilgewater looks kind of okay. At least the feel is somewhat similar, and it was time to move on to Shurima and the Void. Shurima is one of my favorite zones in Runeterra. When the real MMO comes out, I'm not sure what faction I'll play, but Shurima is one of my top choices right now. And after making Noxus, I got a little more confident at using Blender, so I really wanted to make Shurima look as good as I can, within the 1-day time limit of course. So we got to work, and I have to give credit again to Lucas and Bimatsu here, the second kitchen, for making the sun disk. Looks really good, and we put it here in the middle of the city. We made it rotate. I'm not sure if it's supposed to rotate or not, but it rotates in our city. The Shurimans used to use the sun disk to channel the power of the aspects into their warriors, turning them into crocodiles and birds and stuff like that, calling them Ascended. And of course the city is still really small and really empty compared to what it should be, but I'm actually very happy with how this one turned out. And seeing how we now unlock the power of changing the weather, we added a nice sandstorm to this desert because it was massive and very empty. But with the sandstorm, I mean, you can't really see anything, so that's always a positive. Now, Shurima was actually at war with this land called Ikathia in the south, and when Shurima got the technology of the sun disk, Ikathia went ahead and summoned Cthulhu. It's not a good idea, but it did get the job done, because Shurima kind of lost. The problem was the land of Ikathia was also destroyed in the process, and all that's left now are these kind of tentacly looking things, a very destroyed landscape. There's supposed to be a bunch of ruins, but we don't have time for that. We just added a bunch of... there were supposed to be tentacles, they ended up looking like thorns. Hey, artistic expression, okay? That was the Void. We got it done really fast. Things were looking really good, but then the worst thing happened. Classic World of Warcraft came out. Their 2-week deadline was a massive failure because I was now playing hardcore WoW all day and working on this maybe 1 or 2 hours each evening, but I needed something to pull me back into this project, and I thought it's finally time to work on the player character. Initially, I wanted the player to be able to choose one champion of each faction, but who needs that when you can have a Giga Chad superhero pantheon flying around the map at the speed of sound? We got this awesome looking model from Sketchfab, which I'm pretty sure is extracted from the League of Legends, and then we got this sick superhero pack from the Epic Store, put them together, and boom, playable character. Pantheon looks sick when he's flying, but when he runs, yeah. Hey, I never said this was gonna be a good game, okay? For the city of Ixtal, we went back into Blender to model the overall shape, but unlike Shurima and Noxus, this time I could really feel the scale difference. The whole world I had, even though it was a 150 kilometer square, it was not even close to big enough. This city in the artwork has buildings, rivers, waterfalls, gardens, and even after pushing it and making it as big as I could, I even deleted a bunch of mountains to fit it in. It was still very small. This is a city for ants. There are supposed to be rows of houses right here. But where? But you know what? At the end of the day, Ixtal is just a big jungle, and jungles have trees. Now for this, I tried making my own tree manually for once and not relying on assets I download, and then I tried a program called RIOT. RIOT makes the whole process a lot easier, while still giving you a decent control over the shape and style of the tree. So after fiddling with it for a while, I had a few trees, perfect for the Ixtal jungle, and after a good 15 minutes of planting trees, I realized there was a problem. My trees were haunted. Easy fix though, The material I was using was not compatible with nanite, which is a new way of rendering in UE5. This jungle didn't exactly turn out as complex and massive as I would have liked, not even close actually, but the trees check, city check, time to move on. Ionia is the most diverse location in all of Runeterra, from the vegetation, the colors, landscape formations, the creatures, the architecture. Everything is incredibly complex and, again, at a massive scale. We couldn't do any of that, so I was happy with just the Placidum of Navori, one of Ionia's most sacred places. It consists of this massive natural ramp formation with this strange element at the top and these long boys in the distance. First thing I tried was adding the ramp manually. It looked awful. Then I tried making it as a separate landscape in Gaia again. It looked awful. Then I tried importing a brand new Ionia map with a ramp pre-built in Blender, then exported through the same Gaia filters as the rest of the land. It looked awful. But eventually we got it done and we added it to the side of a mountain, not like in the original concept, but I figured the game is scuffed enough anyway, it's fine. What wasn't fine is this stupid shape here. This took me 2 hours to make. Why is it so complicated? I don't know. It's all in the past now. Then we added the grass, then we added the trees. It's the same trees as the Ixtal jungle, except here we have red trees, we have green trees, and we also have white trees, because landscape diversity, of course. This is Ionia right now. It's not even 1% of the complexity of what it could be, but hey, until Riot shows something, my game is still ahead. Next, we had to work on the proud city of Demacia. We started with the main plaza, just a little bit of Blender magic. I was starting to feel a little more confident now, and boom, it looked terrible. Excellent. Then, Demacia has a bunch of these badass statues all over the city. They're in the mountains, they're inside the buildings, they are the buildings, and I tried making one myself with, again, various degrees of success. But then I remembered World of Warcraft, and the Dark Portal, and the hooded statues it has. So I just borrowed those models, gave them a different helmet, and now we had the badass statues as well. We added a bunch of grass, added a bunch of trees, waterfalls, city walls, some quick houses I made, and the main citadel of course. And there it is, the city of Demacia. Very scuffed, but finished in one day. Shadow Isles are the ruins of the old Blessed Isles, which was a place of learning and of dark secrets. But this happened 1,000 years ago, and all that resides on the islands now are just a bunch of ruins and a bunch of ghosts. The initial Shadow Isles we had was very small. So again, we had to go into Gaia and make some brand new islands. We gave it a nice dead material. We went into Sketchfab and we found this really good looking ruin pack. We got all that into Unreal Engine, created some sort of cohesion, trying to make some sort of city there with a couple of dead trees representing the Twisted Treeline map, of course. F's in the chat for that. We added some eerie lights here and there, lots of fog so you can't really see how bad it looks, and GG. The Shadow Isles completed. Freljord covers a massive part of the Valorant continent in the north, and it is split in a bunch of small settlements. The artwork for Freljord is very different based on which part of Freljord you're looking at, but generally speaking, you have the Viking aesthetic, you have the nice, cozy, friendly aesthetic, and you have the Frostguard, Citadel, ice, cold, creepy aesthetic. But I really wanted to do this statue of Avarosa. I really like this picture a lot, but now I had a plan. World of Warcraft models. So I took a model of a human female, gave her a bow, gave her the pose, and made that the statue. It was super simple. Then we got some Vrykul, again from WoW, turned them into statues, and now with this done, I really wanted to make the Howling Abyss, also known as the Frostguard Citadel, also known as the Aram map in League of Legends. You know, the big bridge, it's iconic in Freljord, and seeing how this was going to be the last zone we work on, I wanted to pull all of my newfound knowledge of modeling and make it the best it can possibly be. But not only that, we also had to work on the actual terrain on this side. We had to work on the mountains, we had to create some valleys, some peaks, some more detail. Our program crashed, we lost hours of work, we don't talk about that, we start all over again. And when it was all said and done, the Howling Abyss was probably the single most disappointing thing I've done in my entire life. We put a snowstorm, so hopefully no one sees it. It's also kind of tucked behind these mountains, so it's kind of hard to reach. Please don't go here. Now that your expectations have lowered a bit, I can finally show you Piltover and Zaun. This was actually the first one we worked on, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting Fortnite. But this is what we got. This was Piltover, and this is Zaun. Zaun is even worse. But in a way, Piltover and Zaun are actually the most complex cities I've done in this project, because they're the only ones that have real kind of houses and roads. Zaun even has a secret underground lair. We put a lot of toxic smoke in Zaun, so you can't really see anything. The classic strategy. I think my own expectations lowered enough just making this video, because honestly, Piltover and Zaun don't even look that bad. Probably the best city I've done. With Piltover and Zaun, it's kind of sick. Wait, no, never mind. Definitely has some problems. There's one more zone in the whole game, and that was the land of the Yordles, Bandle City. Bandle City is in a different reality altogether, and the only way to get there is to take some hidden portals. So all you gotta do is find the secret portals in the game, and you'll get to this awesome magical place. And there's our game! Now I hear you asking, but wait a minute, you have a landscape, you have a player, where's the rest of the game? I never said this was a good game. Gameplay is not finished, gameplay will never be finished. For gameplay, we're gonna have to wait for the actual MMO to come out. Right now, you can log in, and you can fly around, you can explore, and you can get a scaled down sense of the whole world. It's very scuffed, there's nothing to do, and our MMO stands for minimalistic, mediocre offline game. That's what it is. If you want to try out the game, there's a link in the video description. Once you're in the game, you fly fast by holding shift down, or you can just double jump. And also you have a map, you can press M for the map. Professional game designer. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this little presentation, and I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of the day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.